Hey everyone, thanks for joining us at SoloCon. Thanks for coming to our talk about Gloo Edge. We're here to talk about what's new in Gloo Edge 1.7. We have the release candidate coming out, and then we'll have the GA in a couple of weeks. We're soaking it for a little bit, and we'll actually talk about what we're doing in soaking. So let's get started. My name is Chris Gaughan. I'm the Director of Product Management here at Solo.io. I joined the leadership team sometime in early December. This is my first full quarter here. I'm very excited about all the Gloo products that we're managing. You can find me on the community Slack, the Solo.io community Slack. If you're not part of that yet, go sign up. I'll have an action item at the end, so don't worry about it. I'll give you the address. Go sign up, and you can find me at Gaughan. I'd love to hear about what you're working on, the enhancements that that are required for any production implementation of Gloo Edge, as well as feedback on the talk. If you had something that you thought was interesting or not interesting, or anything in between, just please reach out. I'm very friendly. You can also find me on Twitter at Gaunettes. I've been working in Kubernetes for over 6 years, so I picked up that tag. I'm joined today by Kevin Daroche. He's our engineering lead for Gloo Edge. We have a bunch of different teams, each with their own speciality. For Gloo Edge, Kevin is leading that up, and he's going to show us some of the demos of the new features that we have in Gloo Edge. You can find him as well on the community Slack. Don't reach out as much. He has to work as an engineer and manage a team and get things out the door. But yeah, say hello. And if you see his name pop up in the Slack, you know who it is now. You could also find him on GitHub. So again, if you have a request, an enhancement request that you put into the repo and you see his name pop up, you again know who he is. First, I wanted to start with a poll. I'll give you a few seconds to fill this out. I just want to get a sense of who's in the audience. So first, if you're currently a Gloo enterprise user, let us know. If you're currently an open source user, I'd like to know that as well. Or if you've never used Gloo before, that's all right. I'd like to hear that as well. So I'll give you a few seconds, and this is pre-recorded, so my surprise is going to be completely affected. Oh, wow. That's very interesting results. Thank you for that. Okay, to move on. What are we here to talk about? Well, we want to introduce you to Gloo Edge. Some of you, according to that poll, have never used Gloo Edge before, or new to Gloo Edge, or just on the open source and maybe not even familiar with the enterprise version. So we want to give you a sense of what's in it, what we've done that's new to Gloo Edge 1.7 as well. I also want to talk about the community and momentum. That's extremely important for any piece of software, any open source, any service. You want to know that it's doing well. So I want to touch on that. And then what's new in Gloo Edge 1.7? What's coming in 1.8 as well in the roadmap? We'll talk about those two topics. For what's new in 1.7, we'll have some demos on SOAP, which is, I know you thought SOAP was deprecated, but I'll talk about that. We'll talk about enabling SOAP in Gloo Edge and how that's going to be coming up. We'll talk about release hardening as well as our integration with GlueFed, which is it's a tool that you haven't used before. You should check it out. It's something if you use GlueFed or been interested in Kubernetes Federation or interested in Kubernetes Federation, solves many of the same use cases, but is completely hardened and product worthy. So what is Gloo Edge? It's a next generation API gateway, an ingress controller built on Envoy proxy. And as you learned in the keynote, Gloo Edge 2.0 also built directly and is Istio native to enable and secure traffic at the edge. It comes with a number of exciting features: advanced traffic management, delegation, federation, which we'll learn and go deeper on today, observability, zero trust security, so you have WAF and some features there, authentication and authorization, integration policies like advanced rate limiting, which are key to an API gateway, and it's cloud native. So all those skills that you've learned as your cloud native architect or DevOps or SRE, they apply to Gloo Edge as well. Okay, let's touch on the Gloo Edge momentum. How is the community doing? How are we doing in general? Now, these are some stats that you saw in our momentum press release, as well as in Edith's keynote, but I wanted to address them here as well. Gloo Edge is our first breakout product at Solo.io. And so I'm not going to break out Gloo Edge in particular. This is for all Solo.io, but I don't, we're a private company, so we're not going to break out Gloo Edge. But rest assured that Gloo Edge is a healthy part of these numbers. So we had 550% bookings growth in Solo.io over 2019. So this is the 2020 numbers. We had 125% net dollar growth in renewals. What does that mean? That means you have this cohort of customers that joined in 2019. How did they grow as far as dollar spend? Did they increase? Did they decrease? This includes everybody, by the way. So if someone didn't renew, you have to include those numbers or whatnot. And this is a very healthy number. This means that the customers grew by 25% from 2019 to 2020. As far as industry goes, this is phenomenal. You see numbers anywhere between 15, 30%. 300% increase in new customers. Again, this is over 2019, whatever the customer count was there. We tripled that in 2020. And I'll tell you that this quarter is doing phenomenal as well. And we have a bunch of new customers coming on this quarter. We have 5 new Fortune 100 businesses in 2020 and 2 of the top global telecom companies. Again, very exciting. These are some of the names of our customers right now. Vonage, Schneider Electric. You see both classical enterprises as well as new companies, as well as companies transitioning, small, large, all over. We run the gamut. There's no particular industry where it's standout. You actually see Gloo Edge across the board. Big, small, traditional, new enterprise, new internet company, all over the place. So growth in delivery, we've seen, or if you look today, there's over 1,600 people in the very active Edge channel. If you go into Solo.io, there's 3,600 plus people in there. In the actual just Edge channel alone, there's over 1,600, and it's very active. We get a lot of questions in there. It's almost like free support. If you love money, go in there. If you hate money and don't want free support, don't go in there. But you do get that, help from other users, help from sometimes our engineers as well, help from me. So please join the Slack channel. We've had over 400 releases for Gloo Edge. You want to talk about agile? That's the most agile thing I've ever seen. Over 400 releases. That includes the patches, the GAs, the betas, but we do a release almost every other day. It's phenomenal. And then we have over 70 contributors for Gloo Edge. Very, very healthy there as well. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Gloo Edge and Istio, because we do get some questions about what about Istio ingress. Yeah, there's some overlap with service mesh and edge gateways, traffic control, traffic routing, TLS and MTLS. There is that, but to go from Istio ingress or Envoy itself into an API gateway is a journey. It's something where you need rate limiting and federation and security and advanced rate limiting and developer portals and whatnot. So it's not just about the ingress. It's not just about what you could do with Istio and Envoy. There's a lot of features that we add on top of that. And this is just a list of the ones that are available today and the differences from just using the Istio ingress to using Gloo Edge. Again, you see that advanced rate limiting, that federation, that developer portal, which if you haven't seen my talk from the other day, I highly suggest it because I go into why you would need a developer portal for Istio. And then Gloo Edge itself is integrated today with Istio, and Gloo Edge 2.0 is Istio native. You saw that in the keynote. We have a tight integration that we're currently working on with Gloo Mesh that is very exciting, and you'll see in the upcoming quarters. So what's new in Gloo 1.7? Well, customers first. We've delivered over 40 customer requests for enhancements in Gloo Edge in this release. That is incredible. I'm so proud of the team, Kevin, for getting all this out the door. A lot of those are blockers, a lot of those were highs that you wanted in those releases, and we got those to you. Gloo Fed integration, it's now one repo, one download for enterprise, one platform. We'll have further UX integration there, but right now, if you're using Gloo Edge Enterprise, you could use Gloo Fed, and Kevin will highlight some of the features that are now available in Gloo Fed when you use it with Enterprise, for those of you that are not familiar with that. Portal enhancements as well. Again, if you're interested in a deep dive on portal enhancements, join my other presentation. I talk about why you need a portal for Istio, why what's available in the portal in the latest release. And then release hardening. We'll talk a little bit about this and talk about what that means as well. So first, here's all the features that we've done, enhancements over the past 3 months. There's a few more that we're getting out the door before we actually cut the RC and do a feature freeze. But you can see there's a lot there. There's many blockers that you have come to us with. There's a lot of highs that were something that you really, really wanted to see within the release. And we got those to you as quickly as we could. Oh, instead of going through each one of those 40 different line items, I wanted to break them into some synthesis, some analysis of what we're seeing as far as the requests that are coming in. 20% of the requests are related to Helm. Change this in Helm, add this to Helm. Why isn't this in the Helm chart, enterprise Helm chart? Can it be more in line with the community Helm chart? So that's about 20% of the request. And we'd like to conquer that and do that on a more systematic basis going forward. And we'll talk about that in the roadmap. Another 5% of the requests are, can you expose this in Envoy? And can you expose that in Envoy? And so we'd like to address that as well in upcoming releases. And then 4% of the requests that are coming in are about observability. Can you see licensing expirations in Prometheus? Things of that nature. So what is Gloo Federation and why is it important? So you might be familiar with Kubernetes Federation, and if you are, then you sort of get it. You can use it for federating of configurations across Gloo, but the exciting thing is you could also use it for failover. You could do a request to one Gloo Edge on one cluster for an upstream service, but if that service is not there, it actually fails over to the other Gloo Edge that is registered in Federation and gets you the like service on that other cluster. So as a user, from your perspective, you never have an outage. It's just redirecting you to the other service. So that's very exciting. That's about failover. You could also use Gloo Fed in order to configure the RBAC on clusters as well. Again, if you are familiar with Kubernetes Federation, then you are familiar with Gloo Edge Federation. Very similar concepts. I'm really going to save you a lot of time instead of configuring each cluster individually. You could just use Federation in order to do that. It saves you mishaps in configuring one way versus configuring another way, which you don't want either. Okay, portal enhancements. What's going on in the portal? And again, if you're interested in this, please join my other talk from the other day. We added gRPC API types into the portal. We, the portal used with Gloo Edge, as well as the only portal available for Istio on the market. It is also the only portal available with gRPC as an enterprise product. There's other open source efforts on gRPC and getting those into a developer portal. But if you want it as an enterprise product, especially one with that's side by side with REST APIs that look and feel the same, this is the only game in town. So check it out. We're really excited about it. We worked hard on this to make sure that it's the same user experience between REST and gRPC. We've done a lot of work on authentication. So authentication to the portal itself, which was in the last release, but also now authentication to the APIs. You could actually use your IDP, not just API keys, but use your IDP in order to start using the APIs. Super cool. It really helps with self-service. And then we made the APIs available publicly if you wanted to. This is, if you're a user and you want to just read about the API documentation without signing in, you can think of this as like if you're like, you want to do like the Spotify or Twitter and just list your APIs in case like, partner or some user is interested in using them. And then in order to use them, you actually sign in and you get access. Same method here. So that's great. Okay, release hardening. What do we do here? Well, we've had release hardening in all our releases, but now we have it within CD, and we did a lot of improvements. One is that we do long-term testing, soaking of betas, as well as the release candidates for GA. So basically every release we're soaking right now. That helps us find memory leaks. That helps us find, if logs fill up over time and you run out of storage, things of that nature, things that you can't find in unit testing or anything like that. So we just let it sit around. We give it a customer load, a workload, so it simulates how you use it directly, and we see if anything happens. We also have vulnerability scanning, which Kevin will show as well. This is now in our CD. And it allows you to, or allows us to see if a pull request actually added a vulnerability and address it right away. And then license scanning, very similar. We're scanning our, licensing. So every pull request, we see if there's a GPL violation so that you could rest assured that our software is compliant with the open source licensing of the components that we're using. And then large scale testing. This is something that we're going to do in Q2, not doing yet. Obviously, Envoy itself is large-scale tested. Gloo Edge is used at large scales within the enterprise, and we're seeing some of our customers in this conference talk about that. But we'd like to test it in every single release at the scales that our customers run at. And so this is something that we're working on. Okay, SOAP. Wait, isn't SOAP deprecated? No, it's not deprecated. These are some of the statistics I've seen out there about SOAP in the enterprise. Now, if you look at the larger API usage, so REST is about 61%, but this is just within the enterprise. About 80% of APIs are REST, but that leaves about 15% that are still using SOAP. And in some organizations, in some teams, it's almost entirely SOAP. We wanted to give that path, that way to get from where you are to cloud native to, transitioning to not just REST, but gRPC and GraphQL, all within the same product, all within the same portal. So embracing SOAP is part of that. We're not saying, oh, it's all or nothing. You could actually take this stepping stone to that cloud native journey. Okay, so what's in Gloo Edge? What's in the enterprise? I just wanted to highlight here that Portal is now in the enterprise Gloo Edge, so that is part of the product, as well as Gloo Federation, and we'll see that quite shortly. Kevin will demo that. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Kevin to give us a quick demo.
Awesome, thank you, Chris. Very excited to show you all some of the things that we've been working on here at Solo on the Gloo Edge team. I think a lot of it should be a lot of fun, really exciting stuff. So there's kind of two different demos I wanted to run through today. The first one, kind of the namesake of the talk, or it's part of it. We're talking about XSLT bringing SOAP to cloud native, and bringing SOAP to cloud native. By that we mean XSLT and Envoy. So XSLT, if you're not familiar, is a transformation language for XML, and SOAP requests are built on XML. And that's not natively provided in Envoy. We build our own builds of Envoy. So we're building XSLT3, so the newest XSLT built on Saxon, and we're supporting that. So I want to quickly run our build of Envoy and show off some of that functionality. The first thing I want to do is we're going to skip the control plane here, just for sake of demo. The relevant, interesting part is in Envoy. So we're just going to run Envoy here with Bootstrap configuration. If you're familiar with Envoy, this is probably going to look pretty familiar. And if not, I'll try to run through it here with you real quick. First thing here, we've got a static listener. So we can see that we're listening on 0000 port 8000, listening for requests and forwarding them onward. You can see that we've got your standard HTTP connection manager filter here. So we're receiving HTTP requests. The part we're doing here is we're matching every single domain, star domain. We're matching routes that begin with the / prefix, so all requests. And we send basically all requests to this echo service, which the config lives at the bottom of this file. I'll show you, but it's an upstream service that just responds with what it got, so an echo service. The more interesting part here, the XSLT related configuration lives here in the IO solo transformation filter. This is something we run and we support. I know we asked earlier, some of us are probably, Gloo Edge users, Gloo Edge enterprise users, and some of us have never heard of Gloo Edge before. We here at Solo do our own filters in Envoy in addition to the ones that Envoy typically ships with. One of the most popular is our transformation filter. This is one that allows you to transform from JSON and rewrite requests and the request body, the headers, things of that nature. Take information from Envoy dynamic metadata. It's one of the most popular and powerful filters we have today that lives in open source. We're adding to the enterprise the ability to transform XSLT. So here you can see that we're matching every single prefix gets a transformation. That transformation is going to be an XSLT transformation, which lives here. And this is, if you're familiar with XSLT, just a standard, or like you can put any XSLT string here, and then this will be transformed on the request path. What we're doing here is, if you're unfamiliar with XSLT, we're just doing XML to JSON. So we're going to take an XML request on the request body and rewrite that as JSON and send that as new request body as JSON to the upstream. And then before we talked about the echo service, we're just going to route to this website, http://bin.org, and this is going to show us what it got. And so just to quickly demonstrate, we'll go ahead and I'll run. So we're going to run our build of Envoy here. This is the XSLT demo. We're going to expose port 8000 on the local machine. That's where it's listening. And we're going to run with the bootstrap that I just showed, and we're going to run on trace level debug, trace level logs. So this should look familiar. If you've used Envoy before or looked at Envoy logs, you can see all of real live Envoy here. And then this is the request that I want to make. So here I'm just I'm echoing the XML request, and then we're going to post it to Envoy. So looking at the XML, we're talking about car prices. We got 4-door cars that cost 6L, whatever that means, and 5-door or hatchback cars that cost 13L. This is standard XML, and we're going to hit Envoy on localhost. And if we make this request, then it hits http://bin.org. We can see in the form that this was transformed with XSLT to JSON. And so you can see this is valid JSON if you render out the new lines and some of the formatting here. And that's it for the XSLT demo. Like I said, this will be live, hitting one of the 1.8 betas very soon, and live in 1.8. Additionally, I'd like to demonstrate some of the new Gloo Fed features that we've been working on. Because there's a bit of setup involved in Gloo Federation involving several clusters and Gloo installations, I've taken the liberty of bootstrapping a lot of that environment for us. All I did is I ran this command, glue demo federation, and this will set up the environment for you. And then you can do what I'm doing right here. I'll walk through what the environment looks like right now. The first thing that I wanted to show is that we have 2 clusters. So we have a local cluster and a remote cluster. And if we want to go ahead and get the pods in both clusters. We can see that we've been bootstrapped in the remote cluster. We have a Gloo installation. We have standard Kubernetes nonsense. And then we have this Echo Green deployment. So this is a deployment that we're going to route to that just returns the words green pod. That's it. So we're doing like a Gloo Green deployment. If we get the same pods but in the local, we'll see that we have the blue deployment as well as a Gloo installation. So the blue deployment, we have our Gloo installation, and then we have GlueFed itself, the GlueFed controller. And so we want to talk a little bit about what GlueFed is doing and how it pieces together here. But so the environment's been set up and bootstrapped already. In addition, we have already registered the clusters. So by that, I mean, GlueFed as a controller, its job is to take federated resources and write them and place them on all of your Gloo clusters. So if you have, you write a federated virtual service and you place that on one cluster or both clusters, it gets written by the GlueFed controller to both. To do that, you need to register the clusters. Those have been done already. You can see that we've already got the secrets required, the kube config to write to the remote cluster, and that likewise exists in the local cluster. Let's take a look at some of the federated configuration that already exists. So first we have a federated upstream. We can see that this federated upstream resembles very much a Gloo upstream. If we look at the metadata, this is our Blue service on port 10,000. It's got Envoy health checks, which will become relevant later. For this demo, we want to fail over from the Blue service to the green service, pretending that the Blue service is unhealthy. And then the relevant for GlueFed is we can see that we've placed this on the kind local cluster. So if we were to go kubectl get upstream on the local, this is the local cluster is my current kube context. You can see that that upstream has indeed been placed. This was written by GlueFed and the federated upstream. The same thing is true with the federated virtual service. And so we have the federated virtual service here. And this will also resemble very much a Gloo virtual service. So we're matching all domains, matching to the / prefix, and routing to the Blue pod. And we can see that this was also placed on the kind local cluster. And then likewise, we could get virtual services, and simple route does indeed exist here, and it looks a lot just like what we had written before. And the last thing we have for setup already is service failover. So we have defined a failover scheme in GlueFed already, and this failover scheme is telling us how to do failover. So we're saying if we have in our primary cluster kind local, which is where the Blue pod lives and also where GlueFed lives right now in our demo environment, we're routing to the Blue service, the Gloo system Blue service. But if we were to fail over, so this were to start failing health checks for whatever reason, then we would route to the green service. And this green service lives in kind remote, so a totally separate kind cluster altogether. And just to demonstrate that all this behavior real quick, I just want to run through. First, let's port forward to this gateway proxy service. This is the service that is Envoy. So now on my local machine, I can make requests that hit Envoy. So if we do that, we're routing everything to Blue pod. You can see that we're always getting Blue pod because it's healthy and it's passing health checks. But now I want to go ahead and forward the Blue deployment and then make it unhealthy. So by port forwarding that service and then making it fail health checks intentionally, now we should be failing over to the green service. And so if I go back and I make that same request as before, curl localhost 8080, we'll see that we're now hitting the green pod. And this is multi-cluster failover, and all maintained and managed by the GlueFed controller, which is writing all of our Gloo resources. We can see the Gloo, once registered, like registering the ability to read to those clusters, you register fed with clusters. It has the ability to discover Gloo instances. So if you had more than one Gloo instance, say you installed in namespace mode, GlueFed is responsible and has these Gloo instances, CRDs. We discover all of those for you automatically. The last thing that we want to run by for the 1.7 release is to show some of the things we've made in release hardening. So first, we've mentioned before, we're doing open source attribution now. We can look at the licenses that we've in all of our dependencies. This is integrated and auto-generated as part of our CI/CD. This is important because we want to avoid using things like GPL licenses, those copy forward. And as you can see what we're using today, and we get notified as part of CI/CD if we were to try to bring one of those dependencies in. Likewise, we are doing security updates. So for example, we do scans. No vulnerabilities found on the latest, but if we were to look at, say, release 1.6, like an older one, we could see CVEs, all of our assets are being scanned for all known CVEs, part of independent third-party tools. And this is what it would look like here. We're also additionally doing soak testing. A lot of that's internal, but I don't want to take too much more of our time here, or your time here. We just thank you all for joining. And with that, I'll hand it back to Chris.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, I'm going to cover the roadmap a little bit into question time, but you can obviously find us on Slack and ask questions there. And I just want to leave a few minutes for questions at the very least. So let's cover the roadmap for 1.8 and beyond. So first I wanted to talk about, there's a lot of excitement about new API types that have been released in the past 5 to 6 years. REST and SOAP came into the market in basically the .com era, and got quick adoption on REST, and that still continues to be very popular. That's not going anywhere. All AWS services have a RESTful API, for example. But as happens in technology, what the use cases, you start to see larger companies figure out that maybe they could do something a little bit differently to do this better at scale, or to address this edge use case, or just do it a little bit differently so it accelerates adoption. And so that's exactly what happened. And when this has happened in the past, you see a real jump in adoption. Like you can think of containers when Kubernetes came out the door, and you just see multiple organizations start to adopt it. You can think of this as big data, or with machine learning with TensorFlow. When those tools are released, not only do you continue to use the existing tools, but you have new ways of addressing your issues, your business case. And so you really see accelerated growth in that adoption curve. And so with API types, recently gRPC, which came out of Google and is now managed by the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and GraphQL, which came out of Facebook, these addressed some of the issues that they saw in REST, especially GraphQL. And so you see that jump and accelerated adoption straight out the gate when, for example, GraphQL came out in 2015. And there's a whole bunch of users using GraphQL, Airbnb, Facebook, GitHub, New York Times. And so we're going to be working on GraphQL. Kevin, in particular, is going to be working on GraphQL in Q2 and making sure that we support that in the Gloo ecosystem. But what are the other initiatives that we should talk about that we're going to be working on Gloo Edge? Majority of our time is going to be still on customer and community requests. Things that come in that you've asked for. This is things that we know we need to address in the platform, so we treat those very seriously, and they gravitate towards the up of the priority list. We also want to increase the API types, and I talked a little bit about how we're working on GraphQL, and we're working on gRPC and adding that to the portal in the latest release. Gloo Fed integration, you saw that today. It's almost 100% there. There's some UX things that we'd like to do in the future around Gloo Fed and Gloo Edge and the integration. Helm changes. This is doing Helm maybe a little bit differently so that we could have the team work on some more interesting things and adding things to a Helm chart. HA and other architectures, and then exposing base tech. So by exposing base tech, I mean, can I expose this in Envoy and eventually Istio versus, doing this directly. Okay, this is another way to look at the roadmap. It's just broken down into different types. So you see the SOAP stuff that we're working on right now that will be in Q2, further integration with the Federation UX, as well as the Helm chart changes that we expect. Okay, what are the next steps? What should you do now? You like this talk, go download Gloo Edge 1.7. The release candidate should be available when you get home. We're all at home, but when you get home after the conference, go download the 1.7. And then in a couple of weeks, that will go GA when we feel that we've addressed the number of the bugs or some of the feedback that we got from you, the user. Join the Slack channel at Solo.io, not just the Slack for Solo.io, but the actual Gloo Edge channel. Go join it, say hello. I'd love to see you there. And then if you're new to Gloo Edge, if you've never seen it before and you want a more basic introduction to Gloo Edge, go sign up for the workshop. It's hands-on. It's the last day of SoloCon. It might be filled up, but join the waiting list and we'll have future Gloo Edge workshops, I promise you. Okay, with that, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to SoloCon. Thank you for coming to this talk. We're still in a pandemic. You can see I'm working from my home in lovely New York City. So stay safe, get vaccinated, please, and we'll now take your questions.